I want to say another thing that I learned over time as I've been trying to develop feature scripts independently and but get some kind of financing. And of course, what I'm interested in, and what my filmmaking partner, who's my husband, who's Japanese American, the scripts that we've developed are either stories about a woman who or stories about an Asian American who, because we want to see more movies about people like us. And the difficulty that we ran into with a couple of female-driven projects where the lead was a woman was that the list of bankable actresses, just in terms of trying to get financing, besides asking your neighbor, you know, if they have any money they'd like to invest, was that list of bankable actresses is, yeah. It's the opposite of the fish story. It's like, it's really short. And so if you can't get one of those actors or actresses, or if none of them really strike you as being right, then you're kind of stuck. And they're saying to me, well, you know, this would be so much easier. Someone at Samuel Goldwyn said this to me one day. If this wasn't a girl meets boy story, that's really the problem. It's girl meets boy. If it was boy meets girl, I could see it. And he was purely talking about its bankability.
Well, with that same token, though, Tom Cruise was getting the role of Salt, and they rewrote it for Angelina Jolie. I think that one of the things is, at the end of the day, it is a business, and like you said, it's the bankability of stars. It's like, who goes to see these movies? And unfortunately, you know, because there's a lot of bad ones out there, but, you know, the big blockbusters and the crazy romantic comedies with fart jokes and, you know, all those things are what's getting a lot of attention, where the dramas, the human stories that I think as, you know, female producers, you know, and some strong female directors are a part of, you know, they don't make that much money, unfortunately. So maybe it's a question to the audience of why they don't go see those movies. Right. You know, because if those movies ended up making that kind of money, those would be more bankable. And if there's one thing I know about Hollywood, that it's about the bottom line and the buck, you know?
There's a great documentary about that called The Blockbuster Imperative, which basically explores what makes, what kinds of movies make more money, you know, the opening weekend, for instance, concepts like that. So I think that it might be a little uneven from the get-go.
But that's actually, new media is changing that, though. If you look at Tron and all these movies that used to have big opening weekends, now the word is out on the first night, this thing sucks. And then movies that normally would not have made any money, like True Grit and things like that, that they had no expectations of making a profit on, the reverse happened. You know, the virtual world started saying this movie is great. So I think we're going to see, you know, if you see what happened this year in terms of what movies made money, they were quality, smaller films. But it is, you know, that paradigm may shift just as a result of the fact that so many more people are able to participate in culture virally, you know.
And where will women fall in that, though? Because it seems that when we have shifts, and I don't know if it's, I mean, then we get into other issues as well, but the way, you know, nurturing environment, and if women tend to be nurturers, and a lot of times I've met people who have said, well, I'm just looking for a really good production coordinator. And that's a wonderful role to have if that's what you want to do, but he meant someone to inspire his dreams. And I think sometimes you look at the political landscape as well as women, as a whole, we tend to sacrifice. And I'm wondering with these changes, how much more sacrifice we're going to make and say, yeah, we want to share, we want to give, we want to nurture, we want to be a part of that, it's part of who we are. But at one point, do we say preservation? I mean, when I think about women writers using pen names and in generations past, because that was the only way their voices were heard, and I know you spoke about being a writer, I feel like there's an invisibility to the women's story. And what I say, and it's probably a little bit more philosophical than business related, but I think what makes us richer as people is that we have an understanding of different cultures and racial and ethnicity and gender and sexual orientation. I feel like when I go to a festival, that enriches my life, but how does that translate to the bottom line? And I hope that, my hope is that the women here, that we try to carry that, and like you said, work together for that, even though we're very different, we all have very different viewpoints, that somehow in this new media that we have, that we can work together to bring about the affirmative action for women. And sometimes I feel incredibly grateful for the work that I do and for the women on the stage and the work that they're doing, but I still feel like there is a level of invisibility. and it is heartbreaking, and it makes me angry.
Yeah, I can remember when I would go out for television shows, and it would be like 6 men, and then I had the bikini part, like I was in the bikini, and I would walk into these rooms with all these executives sitting there, and I'd say, I'm reading for the role of Michael, and they would be like, no, Beth, Michael's a man. And I always said, why?
Good for you.
And I always said, and they let me read for it. They never gave it to me, but I did. But the couple times I found myself testing it with 3 men and me, and the guys were like, "What the hell are you doing here?" You know, because that was the only way. I mean, I wasn't going to take the bikini part. You know, I didn't want that part.
I'd like to, thank you. I'd like to pick up on the phrase that Jill used with the boys club, and which I find interesting and poignant. Perhaps, and you mentioned some of your friends having babies, staying at home. I wonder, do you, this is for everyone, do you feel that it's such a radical idea for a woman to have children, to have a family, and to be able to be active in the industry? And is it a boys' club really, or is it really a dichotomy between boys' club versus girls' clubs, or maybe we have to change the instead of trying to fit into the boys' club and maybe checking out the ESPN headlines, maybe the boys' club needs to evolve, and of course that can only be done by women. What are your thoughts on that and your experiences, if you would?
Well, in my opinion, it's a personal choice. I'd love to have babies, so you know, I think my husband and I are going to try later today. I think that you know, I think that it's just about my mom worked all the time. Again, I think it's personal choice. There's people who can pull it off and there's people who can't. And my friend who's staying home right now, I offered her the job and she was like, I thought I was going to go back to work, but I'm having too much fun with my baby. And it's like, you know what? Bless you. Like, if that's what makes you happy, then, go for it. I'm disappointed. I'm losing a great producer, but, go for it. And so I don't think that's a problem. I think people, work together. I know producers who literally put the baby on the sling in the back and come to work with the baby on the sling, and listen, it helps when you're the boss that you can do that, and when you're not the boss, you can't just put the baby on the sling. But that's just a personal choice of what you want to do in terms of working or not working. I think that, maybe this is my, crazy strategy, but I think you change the boys' club from within, and not from the outside. And so I don't think of it as when I'm on a production I'm about to hit the road, and again, I tried really hard hiring females, and unfortunately, my production coordinator, we hired a female, she left. The only other person available that we had interviewed, because it's like last minute, was a man, so it's like, okay, so that man gets the job. But it's going to be me on the road with probably 5 or 6 guys, and I'm going to be the only female in that group. I don't look at it as I'm the only, someone had to point it out to me, that it's like, oh, by the way, now that she's not going to be it, you might end up being the only female. And it's like, okay, well, we're all there to do a job. And I think, whatever, maybe I'm not, I don't know, maybe I need to be more rah-rah, I don't want to look at people based on color or gender or religious background. I look at people on how they perform their job,
I think it's a very valid attitude. Anybody else want to respond to that?
Well, it's kind of interesting. The film that I have here is a psychological thriller, a Chinese-American thriller, and the lead is a woman, anti-hero character, and it was, so I think doing those type of projects, finding a voice for that is important. And I got a email already from someone, from a gentleman who was at the screening and said, do you have any other projects? We don't see women directing these type of projects or having these type of roles for women. And so I just think it's like an obvious, I think people are aware, that women are underrepresented, and that we, people are interested in seeing what we have to say, and seeing it from that perspective, and seeing what we can do with an action, big action film, and where we would take it. So I think that's a good thing.
I think so too, and I really enjoyed your film. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
It was
Thanks.
in midnight shorts.
Were you there?
I was there.
Oh, great.
Were you there?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't realize. I know.
Yeah, it's
I
fun.
wish, but it was everyone who hasn't seen it. Can people catch it?
Oh,
somewhere else, or-
Deadbeat. We're still in the festival route, so we don't have it online, but it's deadbeatmovie.com, and we're in 7 festivals. Couple coming up in LA, one in Hawaii, Vegas. So it'll be around soon. And I'm pretty sure we're getting distribution. I think that deal's
Yeah,
almost
You get to
signed.
go to Hawaii.
I wish I could. It's pilot season, darn, and I can't get away.
Did anybody else want to respond to that question?
This
Should we
was
move
about,
on?
can you have children if you're, what was the question?
Well, it's really, well, I'm a filmmaker and I have 2 children.
Ah.
And I went to film school, I have an MFA in film. And I feel that it requires a lot of effort and energy to be able to sustain what you do. I sometimes question, well, I think that the status quo because it comes from a male point of view. For a very long time, it's like Doug defined it as a boys' club, and I wonder if it was women who were more in positions of power in the industry, maybe it could be less challenging for women to be able to carry other responsibilities.
Well, again, I can't answer that because I'm not in the industry,
Right. Or
I mean,
independent as
documentary, I mean, again, but just from a personal thing, I need 8 hours of sleep, and probably no, I couldn't do what I do if I had kids. But on the other hand, I think maybe because women tend to take on more supportive roles, that a man can have kids, and because the wife will, I don't know, it just seems like even on productions they kind of do the nitty gritty unglamorous stuff and maybe don't get recognized for it. But I don't know, but then when you have kids you got to have more lucrative jobs anyway, so that's a male and a female issue. So I don't know, I just know I personally couldn't do it unless I had some really it's about money, I think, more than either you have to have extremely well-paid work so you can, you have more flexibility and you can hire a nanny and do all that. So I don't know, I think there's a lot of factors involved. I just know for me, because I haven't figured out a way to make lots of money, and I need time, that I couldn't do it. But
Actresses too, if you are out for a year or two, that can really set you back.
yeah.
Because when you're in your late 20s and you're on that track, especially in the network television, you can speak to this. Those lists are small, and if you fall off that list for a year or two, you might not ever make it back on. And so I think there's a huge issue there. Whereas if you do take some time off, by the time you get back, you might not be able to get that traction again.
Do you have daughters?
I have 1 daughter and I have a son. I have 2
See,
children.
because I think it might start there. I think if we're raising our daughters to not, think of themselves as, well, I'm the girl. It's like we're all human beings. We're all trying to, you know what I mean? I think there might be something in there because you're talking about, men having a certain, I think the men in our business have more of an A-type personality, but I guess some of that's
I
genetic.
think the women do too.
Right.
Women have A-type personalities.
I think more women should. I think men are raised with this confidence. Like they should be confident first. And I think women, I don't necessarily feel like, I was, but I don't feel like a lot of women may, if you're talking about the nurturing thing, like, take a step back, take a step back. I don't know. I don't have
Laura
to
made a
get-
comment about the confident-looking sound guys that she hires, but not necessarily,
Well, I'm talking
that
about
confident
interns.
in
It's the guy interns, they'll act like, oh yeah.
But I think that there's an interesting point there, and to answer your question, I make utmost effort to raise my daughter in a way.